The city skyline stretched wide beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows of the CEO's office. The air smelled of expensive coffee and polished wood. Deals worth billions were being signed. Success. Power. Control. He had it all. Then his personal phone rang. A number he didn't recognize. Foreign. Unfamiliar. He never got random calls. His private number was known only to a handful of people. Instinct told him to ignore it. Probably a scam. But something deep in his gut, made him pick up. He pressed the phone to his ear. Hello? There was silence. Then a breath. A young voice. Shaky. Dad, it's me. Can you come get me? The CEO's grip tightened on the phone. His mind froze. What? The voice was clear. Young. Maybe a teenager. But it made no sense. He didn't have a son. The air in the office suddenly felt too thick. His heart pounded. Who is this? He asked, his voice sharp. The boy on the other end hesitated. Please. I don't have much time. Before the CEO could respond, the line went dead. A chill crawled up his spine. He stared at the screen. No name. No location. Just a number. He quickly redialed. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. Impossible. His mind spun. Was this a joke? A scam? A mistake? And yet, he couldn't shake the feeling. That voice. It sounded so real. So desperate. He exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. This was ridiculous. Maybe someone was trying to extort him. Maybe it was a mix-up. But then his phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a call. It was an email. No subject line. No sender name. Just a single attachment. He tapped it open. A photograph. A boy. Around 15. Thin. Messy dark hair. Pale skin. And his eyes. The same eyes the CEO saw in the mirror every morning. His breath caught in his throat. The message under the photo was short. You need to come. Now. A sharp knock on his office door made him jolt. Sir. Your meeting is ready. The CEO looked at his screen. The email was gone. Vanished. He checked again. No trace. His pulse thundered. He had built an empire on logic. On control. On knowing all the answers. But right now, standing in his high-rise office, surrounded by wealth and power, he had never felt so lost. And for the first time in his life, he was afraid. The CEO sat frozen in his chair, staring at his phone screen. The email was gone, erased like it had never existed. But the image of the boy's face burned into his mind. Same eyes. Same sharp jawline. The resemblance was undeniable. Yet it was impossible. He had no children. Or at least, he had believed that. He took a deep breath, pushing down the panic clawing at his chest. He needed answers. Now. He picked up his office phone and dialed a number. A crisp voice answered. Yes, sir. I need you to trace a number for me. Now. Understood, sir. Please provide the number. The CEO read it out, already pacing. His mind raced with possibilities. A scam? A setup? But if so, why send a photo that looked exactly like him? His security team was the best in the world. They could crack anything. Minutes passed. Then his phone rang again. Sir. We have a problem. His stomach clenched. What kind of problem? A pause. Then, that number doesn't exist. The CEO frowned. What do you mean it doesn't exist? It's not registered anywhere. No records, no history. As if it was wiped clean. But we did find something else. Go on. The agent hesitated. The last known signal came from a remote island, one that technically doesn't appear on any maps. Silence. The CEO felt something cold settle in his chest. A hidden island? A wiped-out phone number? None of this made sense. Then, as if the universe was trying to push him further down this path, his phone buzzed again. Another email. This time, one word. Come. His jaw tightened. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't some mistake. Someone, somewhere, wanted him to go to that island. And despite all logic, despite all his instincts screaming at him to walk away, he knew one thing. He was going. The private jet took off before sunset. Only 2 people knew about this trip, his head of security and his most trusted investigator. He told the rest of his team he was going on a personal retreat. He never took personal retreats. But no one dared question him. As the plane sliced through the clouds, the CEO stared out the window. His mind flashed back to the boy's voice. Dad, can you come get me? Was he really flying across the world because of a phone call? If this was a setup, he'd deal with it. If this was a trick, he'd make the ones responsible regret it. But if it wasn't? His grip on the armrest tightened. If this was real, then his life, everything he thought he knew, was about to change forever. The jet landed on a small airstrip near the ocean. The CEO stepped out, greeted by the salty air. A local contact had arranged a boat for him. The fisherman was old, with tired eyes and sunburnt skin. He didn't ask questions, only nodded when the CEO gave him the name of the island. As they sailed into the mist, the CEO felt something strange. A sense of déjà vu. As if he had been here before. The thought made his stomach turn. Then, through the thick fog, the shape of the island appeared. Dark cliffs. Dense jungle. No signs of civilization. And yet, someone had called him from here. The boat rocked as they neared the shore. The fisherman suddenly spoke. Turn back now, sir. Before it's too late. The CEO's gaze snapped to him. What do you mean? The old man didn't blink. People go to that island. They don't come back. A gust of wind howled through the trees. The CEO didn't move. He had come too far to turn back now. He stepped off the boat and onto the sand. Then, the whispers started. From deep in the jungle. Soft. Watching. Waiting. And then, something moved. A shadow. He wasn't alone. The CEO stood still, his shoes sinking slightly into the damp sand. The air was thick with humidity, the scent of salt and earth mixing in the breeze. The island felt wrong. The old fisherman had already turned the boat around, his warning hanging in the air. People go to that island. They don't come back. The CEO wasn't a man who frightened easily, but something about this place unsettled him. Then, the whispering came again. Soft. Just beyond the tree line. His muscles tensed. He wasn't alone. Slowly, he stepped forward, pushing through the dense undergrowth. Branches cracked under his polished shoes. A clearing opened ahead. The CEO froze. Footprints. Fresh ones. Leading deeper into the jungle. Whoever they belonged to was close. His instincts screamed at him to turn back. This was reckless. He didn't even know what he was walking into. And yet, He followed the tracks. Step by step. The jungle grew darker. The air, thicker. It felt like the island itself was watching him. Then, a twig snapped behind him. His pulse spiked. He spun around. Nothing. Silence. Then, another whisper. Closer this time. It wasn't the wind. It was voices. They knew he was here. A rustle in the trees. Then, movement. The CEO barely had time to react before a figure lunged from the shadows. Instinct kicked in. He sidestepped fast, grabbing the attacker's wrist. A small figure. Fast but weak. They hit the ground with a gasp. The CEO's breath caught. It was a boy. Thin. Wild hair. Barefoot. The same boy from the photo. The CEO's grip loosened, his mind reeling. You're real. The boy's chest rose and fell quickly, his wide eyes filled with fear. You shouldn't have come. Before the CEO could respond, a sharp whistle cut through the trees. The boy flinched. Eyes darting behind him. Then, more shadows moved. People. Coming closer. Surrounding them. The CEO turned. There were at least a dozen. Thin. Pale. Dressed in rags. Their eyes, sunken and hollow, stared at him with something unreadable. Fear? Curiosity? Hunger? A woman stepped forward. Older. Weathered. Her face lined with age, but her eyes sharp. She studied him carefully. You should not be here, she said. But you already knew that. The CEO straightened, masking the unease rising in his chest. I came because I got a call. From him. He motioned to the boy. The woman's gaze didn't waver. We know. That's why we let you land. His blood ran cold. Let me land? He swallowed hard. Who are you people? The woman tilted her head. The real question is, who are you? The CEO clenched his jaw. I'm looking for answers. The woman nodded slowly. And you will get them. But not here. Not now. She turned to the others. Take him to the village. The boy met his gaze once more. A flicker of something in his eyes. Recognition? Hope? Then, he turned and started walking. The CEO had no choice but to follow. As they moved deeper into the jungle, one thought burned in his mind. He wasn't just here to find the boy. He was here to find out the truth. And something told him, he might not like what he found. The CEO walked in silence, his sharp eyes scanning everything. The jungle felt alive, watching, waiting. The villagers moved ahead of him, their steps light and quick. The boy stayed close but didn't speak. The CEO had 100 questions, but he forced himself to stay calm. Rushing wouldn't get him answers. Then, the jungle opened into a clearing. His breath hitched. The village was nothing like he expected. Wooden huts, makeshift shelters, and a towering structure in the center, an old metallic tower covered in vines. Rusted, abandoned, but clearly once a place of importance. And then, he saw them. Dozens of people. Men, women, children. Weak. Malnourished. But their eyes were sharp. Observing. Studying him. He wasn't in control here. They were. The older woman turned to him. Welcome to the last place on earth where the truth still exists. His jaw tightened. Enough games. Tell me why I'm here. The woman nodded. She gestured toward a hut. Inside. You need to hear this in private. The CEO followed her in, the boy trailing behind. Inside, the air was cooler. A single oil lamp flickered on a wooden table. The woman sat. "You are not the first to come here. But you are the first to come willingly." His fists clenched. "Who are you? And what do you mean, first to come?" She exhaled slowly. "This island, it's not what it seems. And neither is he." She motioned to the boy. The CEO's gaze flickered toward him. The boy shifted uncomfortably. The woman continued. "Years ago, a powerful organization created something unnatural. Something the world wasn't ready for." His stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" She leaned forward. "Experiments. A secret project. They wanted to create the perfect mind. Smarter. Stronger. Able to see what others couldn't." The CEO's skin prickled. She locked eyes with him. "And they used your DNA to do it." His breath caught. "That's not possible." The woman's voice remained steady. "Years ago, a research team stole genetic samples from the most powerful and intelligent men alive. Business tycoons. Scientists. Politicians. You were one of them." A cold weight settled in his chest. "This is insane." The woman shook her head. "No. It's the truth." His pulse pounded. His entire life, his empire, his success, it was all built on control. On knowledge. And now, here he was, hearing that somewhere, in some dark lab, they had stolen a piece of him. He turned to the boy. The same eyes. The same sharp features. The resemblance wasn't coincidence. It was design. "You're saying, he's my son?" The woman hesitated. "Then, no. He's something more." The CEO swallowed hard. "Explain." She looked at the boy. "Show him." The boy's hands trembled. His gaze met the CEO's. Then, he closed his eyes. Silence. Then, suddenly, the lamp flickered. The CEO felt it. The air shifted. The pressure in the room changed. And then, he saw it. A flash of something. A memory? A vision? But it wasn't his. He saw a laboratory. Cold, sterile. Scientists in hazmat suits. A child in a glass chamber. Alone. Watching. Waiting. Then, pain. Needles. Voices whispering. And then, fire. Screams. Running. The island. The CEO gasped, stumbling back. It was gone. The boy opened his eyes, breathing hard. The CEO pressed a hand to his temple. What the hell was that?" The woman's voice was calm. "He can see things others can't. Pieces of time. Moments before they happen. Or moments long forgotten." The CEO's chest rose and fell. This was beyond logic. Beyond science. And yet, he had seen it. The woman stood. "Now you understand why they want him back. Why they will never stop hunting him." The CEO's fingers curled into fists. He had spent his life making ruthless decisions. Business, politics, power plays. He had never felt small. But right now, he felt like a pawn in a much bigger game. He turned to the boy. The boy looked away. For the first time in his life, the CEO didn't know what to do next. Then, a deep, mechanical hum filled the air. The woman's face paled. The CEO's instincts flared. Outside, the villagers started running. The boy grabbed his hand. "They found us." The CEO's stomach dropped. Then, the sky filled with shadows. Black helicopters. Coming fast. And he knew, this was just the beginning. The CEO barely had time to react before the first spotlight cut through the trees. The villagers scattered. Panic spread like wildfire. The mechanical hum of the helicopters grew louder, sharper, closer. The woman grabbed his arm. We need to move. Now. But the CEO's eyes were locked on the boy. The boy wasn't running. He stood frozen, staring at the helicopters, his body trembling, but not with fear. With something else. The CEO stepped toward him. We have to go. The boy blinked. Then, his gaze lifted. His breath came out in a shaky whisper. They're already here. Then, the first gunshot rang out. The CEO dropped low, dragging the boy with him. The villagers screamed. Shadows moved between the trees. Armed men. Coming fast. The woman cursed. They won't stop until they have him. The CEO's mind snapped into survival mode. He had been in dangerous negotiations, life-or-death business deals. But this? This was war. He grabbed the boy's wrist and ran. Bullets tore through the jungle. The villagers fought back with spears, makeshift weapons, but it was hopeless. The attackers were too strong. Too well equipped. The CEO's lungs burned as they weaved through the jungle. Branches snapped. Voices shouted. Boots pounded the ground. They weren't just being chased. They were being hunted. Then, the boy stumbled. The CEO caught him just in time. The boy's face was pale, his hands shaking. I see it, the boy gasped. I see what's coming. The CEO knelt, gripping his shoulders. What do you see? The boy squeezed his eyes shut. Fire. Pain. A choice. His voice dropped to a whisper. Someone won't make it. The CEO's chest tightened. He had spent his life making split-second decisions. High risk, high reward. But this? He had no control over this. The boy wasn't just an experiment. He was a weapon. A mind built to see what others couldn't. And they wanted him back. The CEO swallowed hard. Not today. No one dies today. Then, a bullet ripped through the tree beside them. They had run out of time. A metal tower loomed in the distance, half buried in the jungle. Rusted. Forgotten. The woman pointed. The old research station. It has tunnels underground. We can escape. The CEO didn't hesitate. He grabbed the boy and ran. More gunfire. More shouts. They reached the entrance just as two soldiers burst through the trees. The CEO turned. He had no weapon. No plan. But then, the boy stepped forward. The air changed. The soldiers stopped. Their guns shook in their hands. And then, one by one, they collapsed. The CEO's breath caught. What did you do? The boy's voice was barely a whisper. I showed them something they weren't ready to see. His knees buckled. The CEO caught him. Whatever power the boy had, it was too much. He was just a kid. But the weight of the world was on his shoulders. The CEO clenched his jaw. They would not take him. Not now. Not ever. He lifted the boy into his arms. Let's go. They ran into the tower, disappearing into the darkness below. As the CEO's feet hit the cold metal floor of the underground tunnels, one thought burned in his mind. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about fighting back. And for the first time in his life. He wasn't fighting for money, power, or control. He was fighting for him. His son. The underground tunnel was cold, damp, and smelled of rusted metal. The CEO's breath came in short bursts as he carried the boy deeper into the darkness. His heart pounded, but his mind was sharper than ever. The woman led the way, her torch casting eerie shadows on the walls. The tunnel stretched far beneath the island. Above them, chaos. Gunfire. Screams. The jungle was burning. The CEO tightened his grip on the boy. He could feel him trembling, his body weak. "We can't stop," he muttered. "We need to keep moving." The woman glanced back. "There's an old escape route ahead. But we need to hurry." The CEO gritted his teeth. He had been through intense boardroom battles, billion-dollar negotiations, and political power plays. But never this. Never running for his life with bullets flying over his head. The boy stirred in his arms, his voice barely a whisper. "They won't stop." The CEO looked down. "I won't let them take you." The boy's fingers clenched weakly around his jacket. "It's not me they want." The CEO froze. Before he could ask what he meant, a deafening explosion shook the tunnels. Boom! The walls trembled. Dust rained down. A voice echoed through the darkness, cold and sharp. "You cannot run from us." The CEO turned. At the far end of the tunnel, a figure stepped forward. A man in a black suit. Calm. Smiling. Behind him, armed soldiers with weapons raised. The CEO's pulse pounded. He knew power when he saw it. This wasn't just another soldier. This was the one in charge. The man tilted his head. "It's good to finally meet you." The CEO's jaw clenched. "Who are you?" The man smiled. "I go by many names. But for now, let's focus on what matters." He glanced at the boy. "Hand him over, and this ends now." The CEO took a slow step back. "You stole my DNA. You created him. And now you want him back?" The man sighed, almost amused. "We didn't steal anything. We improved it. And you should be proud." His eyes darkened. "But the project is incomplete. We need him back." The CEO felt something hot coil in his chest. Rage. They spoke about the boy like he was a thing. A product. Not a person. Not a child. His son. The boy exhaled shakily. His voice was weak but firm. "You can't have me." The man smirked. "You don't have a choice." The CEO stepped forward. His voice was calm, but every muscle in his body was ready to fight. "I built my empire by crushing men like you." The man's smirk widened. "Your empire means nothing here." He lifted his hand. "Kill them." The soldiers raised their weapons. The CEO's breath slowed. This was it. The boy grabbed his arm. His fingers were ice cold. "Wait." The CEO turned. The boy's eyes changed. The pupils darkened. Swirled. The CEO's mind snapped. Suddenly, he wasn't in the tunnel anymore. He was somewhere else. He saw a vision. A future. The island burning. Soldiers falling. The man in the suit, dead. And then, himself. Standing over the wreckage. Holding the boy's hand. The CEO gasped. His mind snapped back to the tunnel. The boy staggered, dizzy from using his power. The CEO caught him just as the man in the suit frowned. "What did you just do?" The CEO knew. They were going to win. And the man in the suit had no idea. The CEO smiled. "You'll see soon enough." Then, the tunnel lights exploded. Darkness swallowed everything. The tunnel plunged into total darkness. The CEO didn't hesitate. "Run," he shouted, gripping the boy's hand and pulling him forward. The woman was already ahead, leading the way. Behind them, shouts. Weapons clicking. Boots pounding. The CEO's mind raced. They couldn't outrun them forever. But the boy had seen something. A future. A way out. He leaned down, whispering, "Tell me what to do." The boy gasped for breath. His hands shook. "We have to go up." The CEO's stomach clenched. Up? The only way up was back into the open. Another explosion rocked the tunnel. The walls cracked. The CEO saw light ahead, an exit. "Move," he barked, pushing forward. Then, gunfire. Bullets ricocheted off the metal walls. The woman cried out, stumbling. The CEO caught her before she fell. A gash on her arm. Bleeding. They were running out of time. The CEO turned to the boy. "You need to do something." The boy's eyes flickered. "I can't control it." The CEO knelt, gripping his shoulders. "You can. You already have. You saw the future. Make it happen." The boy swallowed hard. Behind them, footsteps. Getting closer. The CEO tightened his grip. "Trust yourself." Then, something changed. The boy exhaled. The air in the tunnel shifted. And suddenly, the gunfire stopped. The CEO turned. The soldiers were frozen. Eyes wide. Mouths open in horror. Like they were seeing something they couldn't understand. One of them dropped his weapon and ran. Another collapsed, screaming. Tearing at his own face. The man in the suit stood still, his face unreadable. Then, he whispered, "So, you really can do it." The CEO didn't wait to hear more. He grabbed the boy and ran. They burst out of the tunnel into the open. Smoke and fire filled the sky. The island was in chaos. Villagers fought back. The jungle burned. The CEO scanned the horizon. They needed a way off the island. Then, he saw it. A helicopter. Unmanned. Engine still running. He turned to the woman. "Can you fly?" She clenched her jaw. "I can try." More gunfire. The soldiers were recovering. The CEO lifted the boy into the helicopter. "Strap in." The woman took the pilot's seat, her hands shaking as she flipped switches. The CEO turned back to the boy. He was pale. Drained. "What did you make them see?" the CEO asked. The boy's voice was barely a whisper. "Their worst future." The CEO swallowed. What had those soldiers seen? Then, a shadow appeared at the edge of the landing pad. The man in the suit. Not running. Just watching. The CEO locked eyes with him. This wasn't over. The woman shouted. "Hang on." The helicopter lifted off, shaking violently. Below, the island burned. The CEO held the boy close as they rose higher, away from the chaos. He exhaled. They had escaped. But he knew the truth. This wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. The helicopter cut through the thick clouds, leaving behind the burning island and the ghosts of everything the CEO thought he knew. He sat in the back, gripping the boy's shoulder. The kid was pale, exhausted. His small chest rose and fell with ragged breaths. He had saved them. But at what cost? The CEO turned to the woman in the pilot's seat. "Where are we heading?" She kept her eyes on the controls. "Somewhere safe." He wasn't sure he believed that. Because deep down, he knew, there was no safe place anymore. The boy had powers. Abilities beyond human understanding. And the people who created him? They weren't going to stop. The CEO rubbed his temples. His life had been built on control, strategy, power. But none of that mattered anymore. Money couldn't fix this. The boy stirred. His fingers trembled as he clutched the CEO's sleeve. They're still coming. The CEO's stomach tightened. How do you know? The boy's voice was weak but certain. I can feel them. The CEO exhaled sharply. They needed a plan. But before he could say another word, the radio crackled. A voice. Cold. Calm. Familiar. You think this is over? The CEO's breath caught. The man in the suit. The woman tensed in the cockpit. How is he on this frequency? The CEO grabbed the radio. If you're looking for a negotiation, you won't get one. The man chuckled softly. Oh, we're far beyond negotiations. Then, the radar screen flashed red. 2 incoming aircraft. Fast. The CEO's pulse pounded. They were being hunted. The woman cursed. They found us. The boy clutched his head. They won't stop. The CEO's grip tightened. Then we don't stop either. The helicopter shook as the first jet roared past. A warning. Then, the radio crackled again. The man's voice was smooth. Turn the boy over now, and you live. The CEO gritted his teeth. Not happening. Silence. Then, so be it. Missiles launched. The CEO grabbed the boy and shielded him. The woman yanked the controls, spinning the helicopter hard to the left. The first missile barely missed. The second was still coming. The CEO braced for impact. The boy opened his eyes. And then, everything slowed. The air thickened. The missile inched forward like it was trapped in water. The CEO's breath hitched. Time wasn't moving normally. The boy's small hands clenched. His body trembled. His nose bled. Then, the missile stopped. Just for a second. Then, it reversed. It spun midair, and shot back at the jets. The CEO's stomach twisted. Boom. The first jet exploded in a fireball. The second broke off, fleeing. The attack was over. The helicopter lurched forward, escaping into the night. The boy slumped, unconscious. Drained. The CEO caught him before he collapsed. His heart thundered. This child, his child, was more than a secret experiment. He was something else entirely. Something the world wasn't ready for. The CEO met the woman's gaze. They both knew the truth. This was bigger than both of them. And it was only a matter of time before the world found out. The helicopter soared through the night sky, leaving behind the burning island, the wreckage of the jets, and a war that wasn't over. The CEO sat in the back, cradling the boy in his arms. His small frame was limp, drained from whatever he had done to bend time itself. The woman flew in silence, gripping the controls with white-knuckled hands. No one spoke. Because they all knew the truth. This wasn't over. The CEO ran a hand over his face, exhaustion hitting him like a wave. His life had changed in a single phone call. He had gone from a billionaire with everything, to a fugitive with only one thing that mattered. A son. His son. He looked down at the boy, brushing the damp hair from his forehead. How could he protect him? The world would never stop hunting him. And if the wrong people found out what he could do, it wouldn't just be one organization after them. It would be the entire world. The radio crackled. The CEO tensed. But this time, it wasn't the man in the suit. It was his security team. "Sir, we have secured a safe house. No known heat signatures in the area." The CEO exhaled slowly. A moment of relief. But that relief wouldn't last. Because even as the helicopter touched down in the middle of nowhere, even as they stepped into the small, hidden cabin in the woods, he knew this was only temporary. They sat in the dimly lit room. The boy had woken up, but he was weak, silent. The woman broke the silence. "You know they'll never stop looking for him." The CEO leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I know." The woman sighed. "You're one of the richest men in the world. You could disappear. Go underground. But that won't keep him safe forever." The CEO knew she was right. Money meant nothing when the enemy was this powerful. And then, the boy spoke. His voice was quiet. "I don't want to run." The CEO's heart clenched. A child shouldn't have to say those words. But the boy wasn't like other children. He had never had a normal life. And now, he never would. The boy met his gaze. "I can see what's coming." The CEO's stomach turned. "Tell me." The boy hesitated. "Then, you have to make a choice." The CEO's jaw clenched. He had been making choices his entire life. Deals. Power moves. Billion-dollar decisions. But none of them had ever mattered. Not like this. He exhaled. "Tell me the choices." The boy's eyes darkened, distant. "You can keep me hidden. Keep running. But it won't be enough. One day, they will find us. And when they do, there will be no escape." The CEO swallowed. "And the second choice?" The boy's voice dropped to a whisper. "You fight back." Silence. The CEO leaned back, rubbing his temple. War. Could he really take on an entire organization? An entire system? Then, he looked at the boy again. And he knew the answer. Yes. Because this wasn't about money. Or power. Or business. This was about something much more important. Family. And for the first time in his life, he had something worth fighting for. The CEO stood, his decision made. He turned to the woman. "We need allies. We need resources. We don't just run. We take them down." The woman smirked. "Now you're thinking like a father." The CEO turned to the boy. He knelt down and gripped his shoulders. "No more running. We do this together." The boy's lips pressed into a small, knowing smile. "I saw you say that." The CEO's chest tightened. "And what happens next?" The boy tilted his head. "That part. I can't see yet." The CEO smirked. "Then let's make our own future." As they stepped into the night, preparing for the battle ahead, one thought burned in the CEO's mind. This wasn't just about protecting his son. This was about changing the world.